Imagine for a moment being a French legionary at the end of the 19th century. The air is thick, humid, and smells of rotting vegetation in the heart of the West African jungle. Sweat sticks to your wool uniform, and the drone of insects is a constant, maddening noise. Suddenly, the green hell surrounding you comes to life. It is not men who emerge from between the trees, running towards your column. It is women, hundreds of them, chanting blood-chilling war songs. Their faces marked with ritual scarifications and armed with European muskets and gleaming machetes. They do not seek cover. They run directly at you, with a ferocity that does not seem human, a fanatical devotion to death, whether it be yours or theirs. This is your first encounter with the Amazons of Dahomey, the most feared female regiment on the continent. But then, amidst the chaos and adrenaline, an order in French cuts through the air like a whip. Your unit's initial panic evaporates, replaced by a cold, mechanical discipline. A metallic click is heard, a sound that does not belong in this ancient jungle. It is the sound of a Hotchkiss machine gun being cocked and aimed. The warrior's war chant is met by a new kind of song, the industrial, deafening rattle of a machine designed for mass slaughter. This is not the story of a legendary battle between warriors. It is the chronicle of how the myth of the world's fiercest female regiment, forged in centuries of local conquest, brutally collided with the implacable, cold reality of industrial warfare and was annihilated by it. Therefore, the premise that 500 female warriors massacred 3,000 colonizers is a seductive lie, a convenient myth that conceals a much more tragic and inspiring truth. The story of the Dahomey Mino is not one of a miraculous victory against a technologically superior enemy. It is the chronicle of an act of collective suicide, a testament to absolute human courage in the face of inevitable technological annihilation. Their immortal legend was not forged by slaughtering invaders, but by unhesitatingly charging directly into the fire of machine guns and repeating rifles. Their story shows us that a people's will to fight is measured not by the outcome of the battle, but by their willingness to face certain death in defense of their freedom and their world. At the head of the Dahomey army marches not a general, but a sisterhood of war priestesses. They are the unit leaders, the Gibi, women whose loyalty to King Behanzin transcends military duty to become religious devotion. Their state of mind is a volatile and formidable mix of fanatical fervor, a discipline forged in brutal rituals, and a supreme confidence in their combat system, tested and victorious for over a century. They do not see the French as a technologically superior enemy, but as just another obstacle on the path to the glory of their divine king. Their confidence is not arrogance, but the logical conclusion of an unbroken history of victories. They do not know that history is about to change the rules without warning them. This elite corps, known as the Mino, constitutes the vanguard and Praetorian Guard of the Dahomeyan army. Though their total numbers are in the thousands, they operate in units of several hundred designed for shock and infiltration. Their weaponry is a reflection of their doctrine. Single-shot flintlock muskets for the initial volley, followed by short swords and machetes for the butchery of close-quarters combat, where they are undisputed masters. Their motivation is absolute and simple: to defend their kingdom, their king, and their way of life against the invaders. For them, battle is not an option. It is a sacred duty. Retreat is not a tactic. It is a dishonor so profound that death becomes a preferable alternative. Facing this force of human nature stands a machine of the industrial age. The French commander, General Alfred Amédée Dodds, is not an impulsive adventurer, but a methodical and experienced product of colonial warfare. His mindset is that of imperial certainty, an unwavering faith in the technological, tactical, and cultural superiority of France. He does not view the Mino with awe, but as a problem to be solved with maximum efficiency and brutality. His goal is not glory on the battlefield, but the systematic subjugation of local resistance to secure colonial interests. War, for him, is not a sacred ritual, but an exercise in logistics and firepower, and he is about to give a masterclass. Dodds's expeditionary force of some 3,000 men is a mosaic of French colonial power, hardened foreign legionaries, Marines, and the feared Senegalese tirailleurs. But their crushing advantage lies not in their numbers, but in their arsenal. Each French soldier carries a Liebel Model 1886 repeating rifle, capable of firing 8 rounds with smokeless powder before an Amazon can reload her musket. And on the flanks, the Hotchkiss machine guns wait. Herein lies the Mino's doom. Their military doctrine, based on the mass charge and psychological terror, was suicidal against a disciplined army equipped with rapid-fire weapons. Their greatest virtue, their legendary courage, became their most exploitable vulnerability, the gasoline that would fuel the fire of the machine guns. The stage for this tragedy is set in the plains and scrubland surrounding the villages of Dahomey, such as Adagon and Dogba. The terrain, at first glance, seems to favor the defenders. The dense vegetation is their ally, a familiar labyrinth that allows them to conceal their numbers, launch devastating ambushes, and close with the invaders before they can organize their superior firepower. In this first phase of combat, the jungle is a weapon, a multiplier of the Mino's ferocity. However, the moment the French, under the pressure of the assault, manage to form their disciplined infantry square in a clearing, the battlefield is instantly transformed. The friendly terrain becomes an open firing range, a no-man's land where every meter of the Amazon's advance will be measured and paid for with an exorbitant price in blood. The fatal error, therefore, was not a decision made in the heat of battle, but a fundamental flaw in Dahomey's very conception of war. The command, including King Behanzin, made the catastrophic mistake of underestimating not the French soldier, but the industrial revolution that backed him. They believed, because their entire history had taught them so, that a charge fast enough, numerous enough, and ferocious enough could break the enemy lines before casualties became unsustainable. They fought a late 19th century war with an 18th century mindset and tools, a miscalculation that would turn their elite corps into cannon fodder. To witness how this brave but outdated doctrine crashed against the wall of modern technology, and to see the precise moment when courage became irrelevant, subscribe and leave your like. The lesson is about to be taught with bullets. On October 6, 1892, near the village of Adagon, the French column marches with the arrogance of an empire that knows it is superior. The heat and humidity are their most immediate enemies, or so they believe. They do not see the shadows moving among the trees. They do not hear the unnatural silence that precedes the storm. For them, this is a simple pacification operation, a military stroll to subdue some rebellious natives. They underestimate not only the will of their opponents, but also their mastery of the terrain. The jungle, which for the French is an obstacle, is a weapon for the Mino, a cloak of invisibility from which they are about to unleash a perfectly choreographed hell, waiting for the precise moment to strike. The ambush is an explosion of primordial violence. Suddenly, the flanks of the column are hit by a massive volley of musket fire. Before the French can recover from the shock, hundreds of female warriors emerge from the undergrowth, not as a disorganized mob, but as a disciplined and terrifying wave. The initial impact is brutally effective. The legionaries and Senegalese tirailleurs, caught on the march, are unable to form a coherent line of fire. The combat devolves into a series of chaotic and desperate hand-to-hand struggles. During these first few minutes, the Dahomey doctrine works to perfection. Terror and speed are on their side, and the French column begins to disintegrate under the pressure. For a fleeting, glorious moment, victory seems not only possible, but imminent. French officers fall, lines break, and panic begins to spread. The Mino are in their element. Their ferocity in close combat is legendary for a reason. Every machete blow is a strike against the colonial order. Every war cry an affirmation of their sovereignty. They are on the verge of achieving what no other force in the region has managed: to break and annihilate a European military column. It is the high point of their legend, the moment when the myth of their invincibility seems about to be written in the blood of their enemies. But it is an illusion, the last flicker of a world about to be extinguished. Just as chaos threatens to engulf the column, a new sound imposes itself over the screams and shots, that of whistles and orders shouted in French. European discipline, forged on 100 battlefields, activates like clockwork. The surviving officers and NCOs, trained to react under the most intense fire, begin to rally their men. There is no panic in their voices, only the cold authority of procedure. It is the moment when the ritual fury of the Mino clashes with the industrial logic of modern warfare. Instinct confronts training, and the outcome of the battle will be decided in this precise instant of reorganization. The order that echoes throughout the column is "Formez le carré," form the square. And as if they were on a parade ground in Marseille, The soldiers, almost automatically, begin to execute the maneuver. The men group together, the outer ranks kneeling to present a wall of fixed bayonets. The disorganized and vulnerable column transforms in a matter of minutes into a 360-degree human fortress, an island of steel and discipline in a sea of chaos. The machine guns, previously useless on the march, are quickly deployed at the corners of the square, their barrels pointing coldly towards the jungle. The ambush has been contained. With the formation of the square, the battlefield has completely changed. The Mino's tactical advantage has evaporated. Their surprise attack has been neutralized, and they now face a hedgehog of bayonets with no flanks to attack. The opportunity for a quick, decisive victory has closed as swiftly as it opened. They are no longer fighting a disoriented snake, but an armored tortoise that has pulled in its head and extended its spines. The jungle, their ally, no longer offers protection, only a starting point for an assault that has now become much more dangerous and costly. Seeing their initial advantage vanish and the enemy entrenched, the Mino commanders make the only decision their military doctrine allows. They know that a long-range firefight against repeating rifles is a slow suicide. Their only hope is to break the square with a massive frontal assault, trusting that their ferocity and numbers can shatter French morale and open a breach for hand-to-hand combat. It is not a decision born of desperation, but the logical application of a way of war that has given them victory for generations. It is an act of supreme courage, based on a premise that is about to prove fatally obsolete. And so the main charge begins. In one last coordinated volley, the Amazons fire their single-shot muskets. They waste no time reloading. It is an almost symbolic gesture before the real combat. They throw their firearms to the ground, draw their machetes and short swords, and with a war cry that tears the air, they launch themselves in waves against the French square. It is a sight both magnificent and terrifying. Hundreds of elite warriors, the pride of a kingdom, charging bare-chested against the most advanced weapons on the planet. It is the embodiment of human will, a testament that they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. Their objective is clear and desperate: to cover the 50 meters of no man's land that separate them from the French bayonets. They know that if they can reach them, if they can turn the battle into a melee, their chances increase exponentially. They are experts in close combat, capable of decapitating a man with a single machete stroke. Their charge is designed to induce panic, to make the French soldiers lose their composure and fire without coordination, opening gaps in the formation. It is a terrible gamble, an all-or-nothing bet in which they stake their lives, their kingdom, and their history, trusting that their courage can somehow nullify the enemy's technological advantage. The French square responds with steely discipline. There is no panic, only a terrifying calm. The officers shout the fire commands. Feu à volonté. The sound of the level rifles is not that of a sporadic volley, but a constant, sustained rattle. A wall of sound and lead erected in front of the charging Amazons. Each soldier can fire 8 bullets before reloading, and they do so with a methodical, lethal cadence. The smokeless powder of their cartridges fills the air not with a vision-obscuring cloud, but with a light haze that allows the riflemen to keep aiming and firing with relentless accuracy. But it is the sound of the Hotchkiss machine guns that seals their fate. Positioned at the corners of the square, these machines begin their work with a soulless, industrial efficiency. The mechanical clatter is the sound of a new era of warfare, one that has no room for individual valor. The bullets mow down the charging warriors not one by one, but in rows. The waves of women, which moments before were a torrent of unstoppable fury, are torn apart, their bodies writhing and falling in heaps just meters from the bayonets they will never reach. It is the final collision between the 18th and 19th centuries, and the result is a massacre. The charge disintegrates. Courage, however superhuman, proves to be utterly powerless against a hail of lead. The few warriors who, by sheer luck, manage to get close to the square are impaled on the bayonets before they can use their machetes. The assault, which began with a defiant war cry, ends in a silence punctuated by the groans of the dying. The Dahomey attack is not repelled. It is annihilated. The battle is over, and with it, the age of the Amazons. Their legend, however, has just been born, not from their victory, but from their enemies' disbelief at the suicidal valor they had just witnessed. When the last echo of the machine guns faded, The arithmetic of the battlefield revealed the stark truth the myth tries to conceal. At the Battle of Atagon, the price of resistance was an exercise in brutal accounting. French losses were almost negligible: 8 men killed and 26 wounded. On the Dahomey side, the field was strewn with the bodies of 865 of their warriors, of whom 417 were the feared Mino, their elite corps. The casualty ratio was an obscene statistic, nearly 50-1. The massacre suggested by the myth's title did indeed happen, but the victims were not the colonizers. They were the female warriors themselves, annihilated by a war machine against which their extraordinary human courage proved tragically irrelevant. The legend was born from a defeat, not a victory. The fate of King Behenzin, the divine monarch for whom his Amazons died without hesitation, was the logical epilogue to this annihilation. The defeat at Atagon and other similar battles was not a simple setback, but the dismantling of his power. Forced to flee his capital, Dahomey, which was burned by the French, he became a fugitive king in his own kingdom. The resistance continued for a time, but the heart of his army, the Mino, had been destroyed. Finally, in 1894, Behenzin surrendered. He was exiled to Martinique and then to Algeria, where he died far from the land his warriors had defended to the last drop of their blood. With his surrender, the Kingdom of Dahomey, a regional power for centuries, formally ceased to exist, absorbed into the growing French colonial empire. The final price, therefore, went beyond the lives lost or the sovereignty seized. It was the extinction of one of the most unique military institutions in history. The core of the Dahomey Mino was not simply defeated, it was erased from existence. The survivors were disarmed and disbanded by the French colonial administration, which saw this sisterhood of warriors as too potent a symbol of resistance. Their barracks were closed, their rituals banned, their social structure dismantled. In a few short years, a 2-century-old tradition of female soldiers, with its own hierarchy, its own deities, and a code of honor that astonished its enemies, was eradicated. The war did not just kill the warriors, it killed the very idea of the Dahomey warrior woman. The most immediate political and military consequence of this war was the extinction of a nation. The defeat of the Mino in battles like Atagon was the death blow that allowed France to dismantle one of the last independent and powerful kingdoms in West Africa. The Kingdom of Dahomey, with its complex social structure, its economy, and its unique military culture, was wiped off the political map to be absorbed into the administrative entity known as French West Africa. The war did not seek a favorable treaty or a territorial concession. Its goal was total subjugation, the elimination of a sovereign power that challenged colonial expansion. The fall of the Mino was not just the fall of a regiment, but the prologue to the death of an entire kingdom, proving that the new imperial age did not negotiate with resistance. It eradicated it. Beyond politics, the most profound impact was the annihilation of an institution unique in world history. The core of the Mino was not a simple militia. It was an elite sisterhood, a caste of professional female warriors who formed the core of Dahomey's military and political power for centuries. Their deliberate destruction by the French was not a mere result of the battle, but a strategic objective. By eliminating the Mino, France not only decapitated the Dahomey army, but also destroyed a potent symbol of the Fon people's national identity and will to resist. The end of the Mino was an act of cultural demolition, the forced extinction of a tradition that challenged all European conventions about gender and warfare. Yet, herein lies the central paradox of this story and the core of its myth. The legend of the Amazons of Dahomey, as we know it today, was not born from their own chronicles or the stories of their people, but from the astonishment and begrudging respect of the men who exterminated them. It was the diaries, letters, and memoirs of French officers and legionaries that cemented their legendary status. They wrote with disbelief about the suicidal fanaticism and incredible bravery of these women who preferred to die charging bayonets rather than take a single step back. It was their enemies who, having witnessed their courage firsthand, became the most effective chroniclers of their greatness, ensuring their story would not die with them. Thus, the myth of the Mino became a strange trophy for their conquerors. By immortalizing their bravery, the French not only documented a unique military phenomenon, but also magnified their own victory. Defeating such a formidable, so inhumanly brave an enemy made their conquest seem all the more meritorious. The story of the Mino was thus absorbed into the colonial narrative, becoming the perfect example of the brave but doomed noble savage, whose fierce resistance only served to highlight the inevitability of European progress and power. Their legend survived, not as a testament to their victory, but as a footnote in the history of their own subjugation, cementing their place in history as the most formidable female regiment of all time. After the din of battle died down and the smoke of the smokeless powder cleared, French military surgeons began the grim task of tending to the wounded and counting the dead. As they moved across the battlefield, examining the bodies of their fallen adversaries, they encountered a truth that defied their understanding of the world and of war. They had spent hours fighting what they believed were the toughest, most muscular warriors of the Dahomey army, men who had fought with suicidal ferocity and a resistance to pain that seemed superhuman. But upon inspecting the corpses, the doctors made a shocking discovery that would spread like wildfire through the French camp and, eventually, throughout Europe. The reality was even more formidable and bewildering than they had imagined in the heat of combat. The revelation that stunned these men of science and war was simple. Many of the bodies of the elite warriors lying at their feet, those who had charged most furiously and come closest to their bayonets, were not men at all. They were women. This biological truth, revealed in the stillness of death, was more shocking than any tactic or war cry. They had not been fighting the men of Dahomey. They had been held at bay and nearly overcome by its women. The legend of the Amazons was not an exaggeration or a fable told to frighten children. It was a literal, lethal reality. This discovery did not just cement the myth, it inverted it. The truth was not as incredible as the legend. It was, in fact, even more formidable.